Hey guys, good morning. Just on a morning walk with my son here, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen, but recently I shared something on Facebook and it kind of blew up, and there's been like almost 100 comments on it, and for the most part it's been a really good conversation, people agreeing or disagreeing or agreeing to disagree at times. It's been fairly respectful, which is really refreshing, especially in this day and age. But I had just one kind of sub-thread that kind of went awry. I was talking about the value of every human being, including the baby, and didn't even mention God, didn't mention any scriptures. Like I didn't bring up my Christianity at all. And in fact, I became pro-life, it was actually before I really committed to being a Christian. So it's just interesting. But this person was very, very, very offended. And, I've offered to meet with them and have coffee and kind of talk face to face, because I think it's really important, especially in this day and age, to not just disagree on Facebook, and especially if it's heated. Actually be willing to meet with people and talk with people face to face and have discussions face to face, because I think it's really important. I think it inspires empathy. I think when people see you and they hear your voice, and anyways, that was my hope anyway, but it just seems like I'm talking to a brick wall. And even my lack of mentioning religion, still just me being a Christian, is very offensive to some. So it was so interesting, because last night I opened up my Bible and was reading, and I just opened up to, wasn't searching for, but just opened up to Acts chapter 19, and I felt like God was counseling me in a way of just showing me a little bit of this is what's going on, and this is how to handle it. So in Acts chapter 19, it's talking about a riot in Ephesus, and in Ephesus they worshipped, one of the gods that they worshipped was the goddess of fertility, which is Artemis, I think. Could be pronouncing that wrong, but anyways, so it was the great Artemis of Ephesus. And in Ephesus, there was a silversmith who got really, really angry, because it was his business. He made his money by, building these images of Artemis. That was his livelihood. And the fact that Paul was preaching that Artemis, this goddess of fertility, was in fact not a god at all, not a goddess at all, it was offensive to him. It threatened his livelihood, and not even just on that, because it inspired a great riot after this silversmith spoke up. A lot of people, I think, find it comforting that they can, okay, so we're created in God's image, right? But the world agrees. I mean, they're not building actual statues of it for the most part, but they agree that they can make things in their own image, in their own likeness, and whatever image and likeness suits their agenda or their comfort level. So you have the world saying, I'm not going to follow the sovereignty of the God you worship and what he says about the sanctity of life, the value of every human being, not just the mothers, but also the babies. I'm going to follow, I'm going to make fertility in whatever image and likeness I want to make it into, hence, the goddess of fertility, Artemis, that Ephesus worshipped. So there's just kind of a parallel there that I find really interesting. But anyways, so the silversmith was offended, a riot broke out, and within this riot, there was a Jewish man, and back then, you know, the first Christians were Jews. So this Jewish man, Alexander, was at the riot, and it was basically like there was just a state of confusion. The Bible says that one person was yelling one thing, another person was yelling another, and there was great confusion. And isn't that so prevalent today? Within today's conversation, it's like no one's really hearing each other. Some people are, but most people aren't. They're just spewing more of their rhetoric and not really wanting to hear anyone. They're not wanting to listen to understand. They're just wanting to shout. And so there was a Jewish man, Alexander, who was at the riot, and he was kind of like pushed up front, and he was asked to explain the situation. Now surely if Alexander can just explain the situation, explain the misunderstanding, then all is well, all will be well, right? They'll understand. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. As soon as the crowd found out that Alexander was Jewish, then they just shouted over him. Great is Artemis of Ephesus. Great is Artemis of Ephesus. Great are our opinions. Great is the image and likeness that we mold fertility into. They didn't even want to hear from him. They didn't even want to hear him explain the situation. They didn't care if it was a misunderstanding. The very fact that he was Jewish offended them. Isn't that familiar? So anyways, after a couple hours, it says, then the mayor finally spoke up, and the mayor of Ephesus said, hey, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but if you've got a legal dispute, if the silversmith has a problem, then let him go to the courts. If there's a legal dispute, let's settle it that way. Let's not be accused by Rome of rioting, because when they ask why we're rioting, we won't be able to answer. And then he also said that Paul hasn't, they haven't, what did he say? They haven't spoken against Artemis herself. Basically chill out here, because there was no real reason for them to be as offended as they were, except for the fact that it was like, what he's preaching isn't compatible with our interests. And so just a really interesting situation that was very reminiscent of what I experienced on Facebook. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. I really feel like God was just comforting me, and hopefully this brings comfort to others in this day and hour that, people are going to be offended. The world worships their own ideas, images, likeness that they've molded their understanding of how life should work best for them. And the very fact that we're Christian offends people. So not everyone, but a lot of people. It's definitely a spiritual battle out there. So it's been hard at times, but I just encourage everyone to continue to love well, because they will know us by our love. That's why I always offer, if I feel safe, of course, and if it's, case by case, I use discernment, but offer to meet with people face to face. Just offer to talk with people, because speaking into a megaphone and shouting our opinions isn't always the best way to get through to people. It really isn't. So having actual conversations face to face is usually what does it. In fact, that's how I switched from being pro-choice to pro-life. I was very passionately pro-choice, and a gentleman, this fellow high school student, took me aside after a classroom debate and was like, hey, you said you have the right to your own body, right? I'm like, yes, no one can tell me what to do with my body. No man, right? And he just gently said, well, shouldn't the baby have a right to their own body? And to me, that perspective shifted everything. So And of course, I mean, if you want to go, feel free to look me up on Facebook. If you want to read the rest of the conversation, you're welcome to. There was a lot of subpoints, a lot of unique situations that were brought up that I really feel like we had a lot of good answers to. So if you're interested, if you are actually interested in listening or reading to understand. So I hope this message blesses you today. Don't be offended for being persecuted for pursuing righteousness. Just love them and speak truth. And that's really, pray for them, obviously. Pray for them. It's a spiritual battle. Our enemy is not of flesh and blood. So God bless you all and have a great day.